All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are our 2024 preview and prediction for the Miami Hurricanes. Coaching staff starts with Mario Cristobal, 12-13 record through 2 seasons. Second year in a role for Shannon Dawson as OC. Lance Guidry, Derek Nicholson will be in the second year each on staff as defensive coordinator. Another disappointing season in the books for Miami. 2 straight top 10 recruiting classes, though, to the Hurricanes' names. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, it was a unit that showed promise at times in terms of balance and being able to air out the football. You've seen that early on in the season. When they completely routed Texas A&M, Tyler Van Dyke, though, continued to be a problem for this team. As a couple weeks later, they faced a formidable opponent after 2 cupcakes, and he completely did nothing. 3 picks against GT in a game they should have won. Had the other 2 picks. I think he even had a fumble against UNC. Didn't play the week after that. And then 3 weeks later, Nick, in a row, he had a combined 6 interceptions with no touchdowns and no 200-yard games, and he was benched for the Florida State game. So Van Dyke, this guy was just an issue, Nick, and it's strange because he showed so much potential week 2 of what they can do against A&M, and then you didn't see that again for the rest of the year. Insert Cam Ward from Washington State, though. Guy was great natural arm talent with a quick release, good ball handler who's a creative thrower. He can throw on the run as well with some ideal mobility. Clutch player who's risen up in big moments, needs to anchor down fundamentals a good bit. One thing that was an issue for Ward at Washington State, Nick, is the offensive line was so bad that I think his confidence was just largely affected. And that's something they needed at the quarterback position is confidence. Van Dyke lost it very fast, and Ward can do the same if he starts seeing the repeat of what happened at Wazoo, and he can't let that happen. So what do you make of this quarterback position, Nick? Because everyone's just penciling this guy in as, Heisman contender, conference player of the year. I think we need to slow the roll a little bit, even though I'm a massive fan.
I do think we need to slow the roll a little bit. I am a massive fan. This is a guy that I think has some room to grow here and be a good player for this team. We got to remember, though, there was a bit of a drama with this. On New Year's Day, he said he was going to go declare for the NFL draft, and just 13 days later, he announced he was transferring to Miami. Obviously, NIL probably played a role in that, but certainly this is a guy that's also been at 2 different stops now, which is certainly a red flag for me. I don't really love when players do that. At Incarnate Word, he had a really great season in 2021, right? 47 touchdowns and 10 picks, just absolutely aired it out. 4,648 yards passing, just a really efficient player at that school. Ends up going to Wazoo and had 2 solid seasons, certainly not bad seasons in my opinion. 200 yards passing in 22, 3,700 yards passing in 23, 25 touchdowns and 7 picks in 23, and 23 touchdowns and 9 picks in 2022. Had a very bad offensive line to deal with, which I think is certainly important to note. And he will be an improvement from Van Dyke, who just seemed to throw the ball over the place, throw the ball into bad areas, fumble the ball, make great interceptions. Just a complete disaster for a quarterback who finds himself moving on now. So I certainly think the offense will improve because he does have a great offensive cast surrounding him. I just don't know exactly how good he's going to be at this moment in time. The potential is certainly there, but does Cam Ward hit that potential? That certainly is left to be determined.
Now you look at the running back room. Obviously, this one last year, they were pretty deep at. They had 3 different guys pushing 500 yards. 2 of them transfer out. Insert Damian Martinez. This is a guy that when he hit the portal, we said, we think he's gonna end up at Miami. We are excited for Martinez if that happens. Just seems like a great scheme fit. Physical run games, what Cristobal loves, and he fits that to a T. Great initial burst into the hole, good vision in open field, thrives on outside zone runs, really good toughness, has no issue lowering the shoulder, hard to tackle despite being not all that shifty. Has some good speed though. 6'2", 216. Behind him, Mark Fletcher. He's gonna be the number 2. 6'2", 225. Nice physical back. Who was very efficient last season. Had a few strong games late in the year. A.J. Allen, much smaller, 5'11", 186. Also had some good reps. Also added a 4-star Jordan Lyle. Deep backfield, the top 2 guys really fit that mold Cristobal looks for, Nick. 1-2 punch of Martinez and Fletcher might be one of the nation's best come December.
I think this is a really good add. Damian Martinez, a guy, Super Bowl dog weekend visitor during his high school recruitment process, a really talented back coming over from Oregon State. Had a great season in 22 when he played a full year, nearly 1,000 yards rushing, 6.1 yards per carry, and 7 scores. Battled injuries last year, only played in 5 games, but still had 500 yards rushing through 5 games, as well as 2 scores. So you get a lot of production with him. He's a guy that's going to be able to grind and pound. A really good add of the portal, in my opinion. Mark Fletcher is great defensive depth as well, or offensive depth as well. There, 514 rushing yards to him, 4.9 yards per carry, 5 scores, and A.J. Allen also had 361 yards rushing, 5.2 yards per carry, and 5 scores. Solid numbers there, certainly from this backfield. This is a really good trio. I really like what they have here. Really good depth as well. Jordan Lyle, a high-ranking recruit out of high school as well, a true freshman that you can plug in potentially, a 4-star that has some nice backfield depth. I really like what this running back room has, a very strong unit.
And I want to shift to the offensive line. Before the pass catchers, it's going to lead me into a point about the running game I certainly want to talk about. You look at Francis Malgoa at tackle. The guy really fires out of his stance. Great base and leverage and pass pro. Elite movement and quickness. Struggled a good bit as a true freshman. Showed better consistency at times. Had to have struggles to the end of the year. Former 5-star of high upside. Jalen Rivers is back at left tackle following an impressively consistent year. Another X5 star in Samson Onkoloa will step in at left guard in his second year in the program. 6'6", 300. Great lateral movement and body control. They picked up Zach Carpenter from Indiana. Above average player, has 1,800 snaps to his name. Right guard returns vet, and as Cooper, who was really good in pass blocking, struggled to get consistent push in the run game. In terms of depth added, 6'9", 348-pound Markel Bell from Holmes Community College at tackle. They also returned Matthew McCoy, who played most of any projected reserve at 141 snaps. Tommy Kinsler kept his red shirt 6'6", 340, but barely playing last season, a guy they think they can insert, though. And the point I want to make here, Nick, is we just talked about how the mold of this offense, or at least in Cristobal's era, in his career, really, has been to run the football and be physical. And against Georgia Tech, a game they should have won if they would have just took a knee. Nonetheless, they ran the ball for 165 yards. The next week against UNC, ran for only 91 yards. GT has one of the worst run defenses in the country. North Carolina has always had one of the worst in the conference. I think they're outside. They're pushing outside top 100. We want to talk about what they can accomplish on the ground, Nick, in those games against favorable matchups. They did absolutely nothing. So that leads me to a lot of concerns here that even if you add a guy like Damian Martinez, he could be Bo Jackson. It doesn't matter if that's how they're going to play up front in big games like that, where they should easily just run over the opposition.
I share similar concerns, which is why I'm a little more bullish on this Miami team. They were 43rd in the nation last year, 173.1 rush yards per game, but that's not good enough for Miami offense. This team should easily be a top 30 rushing attack, even potentially top 20, and the offensive line is certainly playing a role in that. While I love the running back room, and I can wax on and on about that, the offensive line does worry me. Now, Francis Muaga, I'm not concerned about him at right tackle. He's a incredible player, looked really good as a true freshman, going to be a star for years to come, a really strong player. The rest of this team worries me. Anise Cooper at right guard, can he step up? Is he going to be better this year? Samson Okolua as well. Is he going to be better? Jalen Rivers, what is he going to look like at left tackle? That's a very important position. Zach Carpenter, they bring him in. Can he step up? He was previously at Indiana and Michigan, so some Big Ten experience there. Can he finally reach those heights? Matthew McCoy, want to see if he gets moved around, potentially plays at right guard as well this year. The offensive line has to find a way to step up for this rushing attack to be successful and give Cam Ward time to be able to do something in that pocket.
If he does have time, he has a great group of weapons here, led by Xavier Resto Pro, a strong-headed pass catcher, 5'10", 197, nice short area quickness, impressive route runner, smaller frame player, catches with his body often. Absolutely love Restopo, though. I think he's a great asset for this offense. Jacoby George, a good yak ability player, downfield playmaker, but makes waves in the quick game as well, 6'1", 176. Nice addition from Houston, Samuel Brown, a nice route runner, and has a knack for finding open areas in space. He's 6'2", 195. Isaiah Horton brings some good size and physicality to the position at 6'4", 205. Made some big plays in sporadic appearances last fall. Ray Joseph was more of a return man than a pass catcher, but a second-year player. They also added a top 100 true freshman at Nye Carr. You look at tight end. They returned two veterans in Elijah Arrow and Riley Williams. Neither played all that much a season ago. And Cam McCormick back for his 9th year of ball, for whatever reason, at age 26. Tight end groups are looking a little weak, Nick. A wide receiver, though, they certainly have some components here that can do damage in a great trio.
Incredible talent, and the top two, Restapro and George, they returned nearly 2,000 yards of production. Restapro, a really great player, 1,100 yards receiving, 12.8 yards for grabs, 6 scores for him. Really good numbers. Jacoby George as well, 864 yards receiving, 15.2 yards for grab, and 8 scores for him. Isaiah Horton, he returns 168 yards for production, 12.9 yards for grab, and 1 score. Ray Joseph, a really good special teamers, but also had 6 grabs last year. Look to see him get involved in the pass game a little bit more. I like what this room has. They added a great player in Joshua Trader and Nye Carr as well, 2 solid players they got out of high school recruits. I think it's a really good wide receiving core, and I think Cam Ward throwing the ball to them will make them a lot better than Tyler Van Dyke was. Just can that offensive line hold up? That's the key here for this offense.
Now looking at the verdict, the Canes offense has a 3-headed monster in Ward, Restopo, and Martinez, a nice physical bunch in the backfield. This offensive line is really shaping into one Cristobal can really be proud of. Offense should be one of the best in the FBS. Tyler Van Dyke's now gone, and they can certainly find better play under center to allow this cast to flow freely. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, it was fairly good last season. They returned 5 starters, add 10 guys in the portal. Starts with an elite defensive line. Ruben Vane was a massive breakout star, phenomenal in terms of rushing the passer. Was very good versus the run as well. Akeem Mesidor only played in 2 games last season, was a phenomenal player as the leading sack getter in 2020. Tyler Barron got paid a good amount of money to come off the edge here, being a good player in both rushing and run defense for Tennessee. Elijah Alston was an elite player in all regards, especially in running against opposing linemen for Marshall last fall. Great edge group here, one of the nation's best. Interior defensive line gets even juicier. Consists of more impressive transfers. C.J. Clark from NC State really underperformed for the most part, but is 6'3", 305, capable of playing lots of snaps. Simeon Barrow, a good run stopper for Michigan State, 6'3", 290. Marley Cook was a real standout for Middle Tennessee, 298 pounds, and Ahmad Moten played 150 snaps his first season on field action. They also have a 295-pound four-star enter in his second year in Josh Horton. Elite defensive line here, Nick. I love what they have in terms of depth. I think production should be through the roof this year, or will it?
Incredible unit. I think there's some really solid pieces here. A very makeshift unit. A lot of transfer portal guys, which does worry me a little bit, but I do think they have some great pieces they added out of the portal. Ruben Baines, obviously a great player. 44 total tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, a pass breakup for him. Good numbers. Akeem Mesidor only played in 3 games last year, but had 5 total tackles, 1 each in terms of tackle for loss and a sack. Decent production from him in limited appearances. Ahmed Moten as well didn't play a whole lot last year. They added a lot of different pieces from the portal. C.J. Clark, I think, was a great add. Simeon Barrow as well as a really solid. I think Barrow is a guy that could really step up and be a great player for this team. Previously at Michigan State, Clark from NC State, who was a really solid add as well. Tyler Barron, I like him coming off the edge. I think he could step up. Elijah Alston, I like the pressure he provides. A really great, strong pass rusher from Marshall that steps over here. I like what this defensive line has. I'm a little concerned about plugging in different guys from different programs, but overall still a really strong unit.
Look in the middle of this defense, Francisco Mauigoa at linebacker was a tremendous player last fall, shot downhill with such aggression and playmaking, with a real standout versus the run. They need the other guys around him to step up. Wesley Lasante wasn't bad and gained plenty of experience, should mold into a consistent contributor. Jalen Alderman played a lot of snaps as one of the top tacklers for Louisville, also had 7 tackles for loss. Raul Aguirre was a 4-star that played 40 snaps last season. Much improved room. Think they can take some sizable leaps forward. Need to see physicality from the entire bunch, though, Nick. I want to see them become more of an enforcer-like group outside of Mauigoa.
I think this is a unit that has some decent pieces, but I agree they need to get a bigger, more physical enforcer. Mauigoa obviously is a great player. Top returning tackler, 82 total tackles, 18 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, a pick, and 3 pass breakups. A do-it-all guy, really solid numbers. Wesley Bizziante as well, a really solid piece, 44 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him. Good numbers there. Raul Aguirre as well. Had some decent reps as a rotational piece, 7 total tackles for him. I like this linebacking core. I think it's the best part of this defense. A very nice unit that's got a little bit more physical, lay some bigger hits, but I do think it's a great middle of this defense.
Looking at the secondary, Damari Brown played a good bit as a true freshman. Didn't play all that well, but still a very young player. Daryl Porto, on the other hand, was quite impressive as coverage. He's a nice vet they can count on at corner. Jadias Richard, another player that didn't end up playing or really having the impact as expected. Another guy with some high upside, though. Michelle Powell from Washington, a veteran DB, played lots of nickel last year, so gained good reps and should be a good contributor in whatever role he's assigned to. Robert Stafford was a top 200 recruit, didn't play in his true freshman season. I think depth at corner is a little iffy. Overall, though, I do like the upside in the youth they have. Safety group loses both high-end skilled starters, though. Jaden Harris enters his 3rd year in the program, 150 snaps to his name at this point. Same goes for Markeith Williams, both only being rich year sophomores, though. They picked up Isaiah Taylor, who played some quality reps in Arizona in his 2 seasons there. Secondary, not all that impressive. They have good players, though, nice quality assets with some nice upside. What do you make of this here, Nick? Because they do lose 2 key players in Cameron Kitchens and James Williams.
They do lose 2 talented players in Kitchens and Williams, which I think is a tough loss for this team. They do have some decent pieces. Brown played a little bit last year as a true freshman, 14 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. Marquette Williams as well, 15 total tackles for him. Daryl Porter Jr. had 23 total tackles, 4 pass breakups, a really nice coverage asset. Jaden Harris played a little bit, 7 total tackles. They added Isaiah Taylor and Michelle Powell, who are 2 solid adds. Powell especially, I think he's a guy that you can see a lot out of him potentially. He was a good add plugging him in. I do think the secondary unit will struggle a little bit. They lost 2 talented pieces. I think they're going to struggle and hold this defense back a little bit. But overall, I do think this defense has some nice pieces to make them competitive in this conference.
Now looking at the verdict for this defense, the Canes should improve considerably of what they have in the front 6, especially with all the skill and size on the D-line. Linebacking group should grow to an impressive tune, and even if the secondary struggled early on, it will eventually work its way into an at least above-average unit. Don't expect them to be a major liability. Looking at the final prediction for Miami, the Canes have themselves another strong roster in place as the trenches are incredibly stout. the aforementioned three-headed monster on offense will be able to spark a lot of damage on their opponents. The issue with Miami seemed to be Van Dyke, but the rest of the team just struggles to play cohesive ball across 60 minutes, let alone 14 weeks. Cristobal needs to coach the hell out of this team, Nick. If he does, they can make the CFP. If not, they'll be a laughing stock once again. I think that's the part that everyone's hesitant on with Miami, and really just Cristobal as a whole. This is a team I had a bet on last year to hit the over win total, Nick, and the reason they didn't is because they didn't take a knee against Georgia Tech. And then as the season went on, they had just blemish after blemish. They probably should have beat Louisville. Only had 6 points against NC State. They beat Clemson, though, in a couple overtimes. And they ended up losing their bowl game, which, is what it is. But this is a team, again, they just struggle with cohesiveness. And that just seems to be a theme under Cristobal, is they can never do what they are supposed to. They should have made the CFP at Oregon a couple years back. What do? They go on the road, lose to Arizona State and a team they should have beat. And Cristobal just seems to, cost himself time after time, Nick. Why will this year be any different?
I don't think it will be any different. That's why I have this team as 8-4 with losses at Florida, at Louisville, as well as hosting Virginia Tech and at Syracuse. I think they will find a way to beat Florida State, which will be a marquee win for this team. I think they're going to find a way to struggle. I think Mario Cristobal has proven that his teams have not been able to get over the top, and I don't think this will be anything different with some plug-and-play pieces on the defensive line, as well as some concerns with the offensive line and the quarterback play having ability for Cam Ward to really go out and do what he needs to do best this year. I think 8-4 for this team is where they're going to go, which is not good enough for Miami. They need to be better considering the roster they have. They've been recruiting really strong. Cristobal is a great recruiter, but his teams just seem to struggle playing together. I'm not going to fall for the Miami hype this year. I have them at 8-4. I just don't think they're going to be able to get to that 10-win mark. I think they're going to stumble along the way. We saw it last year where they stumbled in games they should have won and ended up losing a bowl game to Rutgers, which I think is certainly an indictment on your program. This is going to be an 8-4 season for me, which, in previous years may not be that bad for Miami, but Miami fans expect a lot right now. They want to see this team hit high heights, and they're not really being able to do so right now. I'm not entirely sure what has to be changed in South Beach to figure this out, but this team at 8-4 right now is where I have them, and that's just not good enough for what this team could do based on what they have on paper.
Yeah, it's certainly hard to argue against that sentiment. I'm going to pick them to do better, though, and compete for the conference, having them go to Charlotte. I just think Cam Ward's going to be a big difference maker, because certainly Cristobal is one thing. Tyler Van Dyke is another, where they showed potential. They absolutely hammered A&M in a game a lot of people didn't think they would win. I picked them to win that game. I didn't think they'd put up almost 50 on them, though. So I think this team will play better in terms of that cohesiveness, and I think they will win 10 games, but I wouldn't be shocked one bit if they do what you're predicting, Nick, and that's a bit of a slump. They shouldn't, though. This roster is way too good. Shannon Dawson and Ward, a pretty good scheme fit, like what they've brought in on that side of the ball. Alongside of what they return, the roster is too good for them to disappoint, Nick. So if they do go 8-4, it's going to be a tough conversation, especially with the guy being such a great recruiter. What can you really do? That's really a hard predicament to be in, is when you have a guy who can recruit the hell out of the high school plains, but not produce on the field. So that's going to be it for today's episode. As always, I appreciate you joining me, even though you're a little bit too harsh today on Miami.
I'm a little harsh, but I think it's justified at this moment in time. I haven't seen enough from Miami to prove me wrong. I'd love for them to prove me wrong. I think this team would be phenomenal if they got to the college football playoff. I just don't see it right now. I'm gonna see it to believe it kind of guy. Gonna have to see it this year. Right now I'm at 8-4. I hope they can beat that expectation, but I'm gonna be a little more bullish on them right now.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.